Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are once again playing some Turbodepths, this time of a rainbow flavour, and we're playing a card that I normally am not particularly high on, but I've had a lot of requests to play it, so here we are. This is Stifle in our Turbodepths deck. So, quick rundown for people who aren't familiar with Turbodepths. This is Dark Depths. It makes a 20/20 when it has no counters. We remove those counters with Hexmage, or we make a copy that has no counters with Stage. We've got a bunch of tutors to make that happen. We've got a bunch of fast mana to power it out. And that's how we're winning the game. 20/20, slapping in our opponent's face. Our protection suite, we've got some interesting things here. We've got a bit of hand disruption to sort of check that the coast is clear. But then we've got ourselves some Not of This Worlds, which can protect the creature. We have some Stifles, which can protect us from Wasteland, or Karakas, or a Solitude, or a Leyline Binding, that sort of jam. And we've got some Pithing Needles that we can name Wasteland with. And Karakas, or whatever the problem card is. A few silver bullets on our lands, things like Ghost Quarter and Bojuka Bog, as well as the Boseiju and the Sejiri Steppe. And that's pretty much the main deck. We're going to make a 20/20, and we're going to try and protect it and get the game won. Sideboard-wise, we're trying to lean more heavily into the fact that we are a Rainbow Lands deck list. So we've got 3 Deafening Silence as our anti-combo card this time around. Because we're playing Rainbow Lands, we actually get to try and play some of these cards that you don't normally see in like the Golgari builds. We've got Graveyard Hate as per usual with Sejiri Extraction. We've also got a couple of Meltdown, so the Meltdown and the Deafening Silence between them are going to be pretty good against a decent chunk of the meta. We've got some quick Reflexes to protect our creature against like the control decks that want to be targeting with removal, mainly white removal. We've got a Dismember, so we have a way of killing Magus of the Moon, and we have 3 Hydroblast, which can kill Magus of the Moon and Blood Moon. And that's pretty much where we're at here. So trying some different stuff out. This isn't necessarily the deck list I would recommend you play if you're playing Rainbow Depths, but it's what we're going to try today and sort of experiment, see how it feels compared to what I would describe as the stock list that I run. I think leveraging the coloured mana makes a lot of sense here, and that's what I probably would recommend, but not exactly this configuration yet, but people like Stifle. So we're going to run Stifle and see if it feels good. I know a lot of tempo decks are running it at the moment, like the Grixis tempo deck runs some Stifle these days. So maybe it's time to fold it back into the deck and see how it feels. Alright, that's the deck. If you love 2020 content, by all means check out my Patreon. I have lots of dedicated content about Turbodepths. I have a massive primer for Turbodepths. If you want to sort of learn the ins and outs, by all means have a little sub to my Patreon. I also have a budget guide, so if you want to play a budget build of Turbodepths, there's a free guide to that on my Patreon as well, so why don't take a look. Alright, nothing else to say about that. Let's make some 20/20s and smash some opponents. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past, so why not give them a try? Welcome to round 1. Let's see what our hand does. It makes a turn 2 Marit Lage. So I would describe that as pretty good. And if something happens to our Hexmage, like it gets discarded, we have the combo anyway, so seems like where I want to be. Play an Urborg. This can be wastelanded, which is annoying, but that's a wasteland that's not going on our combo. And if they don't wasteland it, then they could be in trouble. Ancient Tomb. Okay, we're going to see something like a Chalice here. Yeah, okay, we don't care about this. Most of the Ancient Tomb matchups are pretty good for us as a general rule. Here comes the Dark Depths. Here comes Vampire Hexmage. Let's pass the turn. We can choose when to do this. I'm not expecting a wasteland out of our opponent's deck. If they do have a wasteland, then we can play the stage and then we can play around the wasteland. Okay, no wasteland. Fable of the Mirror Breaker pitching a Spirit Guide. Interesting. This suggests to me that our opponent might have a Solitude, or they might just be hoping that we don't go for it here. But let's see. Do you have a Solitude? If they have a Solitude, that gives us a lot of life to work with. Mana Confluence is pretty great here. Alright. So the Mana Confluence, we can play that, cast our Sylvan Scrying, get a Dark Depth. So if they do have a Solitude for this, we're going to be able to re-up and get our thing going. Alright, so I don't know what flavour of Ancient Tomb deck this is. This could be the Initiative, or it could be Mono Red Prison. Those are the 2 things our opponent is showing us. Either way, we're going to want these Hydroblasts. Are we going to want this Dismember? Probably. Are we going to want Meltdown? Potentially. So these are some things we want. What do we not need is the easier one. We're not really looking at Not of This World if they're Mono Red, but if they are the Initiative, then these are going to be more useful. I'm not wholly convinced you want Stifle in this matchup. It's a difficult thing to hold up. I also don't think the Pithing Needle is particularly exciting. So if we're getting rid of all these things, maybe we can leave in one Pithing Needle or one Stifle. I think one Pithing Needle is probably better than the Stifle. I promise I'm not just going to be trying to sideboard out a Stifle all the time. But what are we stifling? Our opponent doesn't have Wastelands. They don't have Karakas. They don't have Leyline Binding. They might have the Solitude. But none of this world covers that and doesn't get hit by Chalice. So that's just going to be better for us. We don't have anything like the Force of Vigor, which would be a thing that you can reach for. But the Meltdown can do some work getting rid of the Chalices and stuff. So let's ball in with this. Okay. I will keep this. This hand does the thing we need it to do. So this is a turn 2 Marit Lage again. But if they have a turn 1 Magus of the Moon or Blood Moon, that is going to be somewhat problematic for us. I think if they had one, they probably would have slammed one of these hands by now. Okay, they're down to 5 cards, so they're clearly looking for that. We are weaker to Blood Moon with the Rainbow build as opposed to the Green-Black. The Green-Black's got actual basic lands in it, so it can reliably cast things like activate Boseiju or cast Abrupt Decay. Let's see if our opponent's just going to turn 1 Moon us. Chromox. Now, there might be initiative as well, so we'll have to wait and see. Swords to Plowshares. Okay, so they are on the initiative train. So going all in on whatever this one card is. Archon of Emeria. Sure. That is acceptable enough, I suppose. Meltdown. Yeah, we're not into that right now. Play this Urborg. Play this Lotus Petal. No, that's a mistake. We should have played the Gemstone Mine here, right? Because we want to turn that in our opponent's turn. Actually, no, we have to wait a turn anyway because of the Archon, so it doesn't actually matter. It means that if we draw... I guess if we drew a Dark Depths, either way, it would be fine. Yeah, so we're going to take 2 here. A Ghost Quarter. It's not that exciting, is it? So we'll play out this Gemstone Mine. We could try and float something like a Meltdown here and just get rid of their Chromox and stop them being able to cast any of their 4-drops off the top. But that means we can still cast our Crop Rotation on our opponent's turn if we do that. I think that might be worth doing here, you know. If we take this out, next turn... Oh no, because this will come in tapped, right? No, we can't do that. Alright, we got there in the end. So, we need our opponent to not draw too good straight away. I don't think they race us if they play a 4-drop right now. Our opponent has 1 card over there. A Mana Confluence. Not opposed to having this in play. So we will go black and black to make this. So now we can try and kill their Archon of Emeria here, but that does expose us to things like Touch of the Spirit Realm, but that's going to get us either way. So I think we're probably supposed to see if they play a spell here. Alright, I think we'll go for the block this time. So we're going to Crop Rotate away our Mana Confluence here, because the Gemstone Mine taps for black anyway, so we're not going to really remove that many counters from it. Depths. Let's see if we can have a big monster in play. Do we get to gobble up their Archon or not? They could Solitude here. Touch the Spirit Realm, sure. We don't really have a way of getting around that one with what we have in play right now. So just going to take some damage. Now that we know their initiative, it does change how we want to sideboard a little bit. Yavimaya. So we're kind of getting towards some of the things we want. So let's Meltdown for 0 to get rid of this Chromox. Play this Yavimaya. And pass. This means we can Crop Rotate in an emergency. Not really sure we're going to have any particularly useful things to Crop Rotate for. But it's a thing we have access to. Take 2 from this. I don't think we're Crop Rotating our end step here, but there is an option for it. Right, a Boseiju is not unhelpful, but also not where we want to be right now. So play this, and are we going to play this out on Touch of the Spirit Realm? I think probably worth doing while we're here. Touch the Spirit Realm. It's not Touch of, it's just Touch. Okay. And we're holding up a Boseiju if we need that. We can Crop Rotate for a Dark Depths, but if we find a Thespian stage, we're going to want to Crop Rotate for the other one. So there's no point fetching it until we find one of our other combo pieces. Sejiri Steppe. That's not very helpful right now. So we're going to leave that in our hand. And we're also going to leave this Boseiju in our hand too. Once again, the Angry Archon coming in, dealing us some damage. They have a Caracas now. Okay. If we blow up their Caracas, they will have access to red mana. So we don't need to do that right now. Inquisition of Kozilek. I don't hate this. Let's see what our opponent's working with. A Chromox, Caves of Chaos Adventure. Okay. So if we turn this into a red source, they will be able to caves. Which isn't really where I want to be. Because I've got this Ancient Tomb kicking around. I don't mind them getting a caves when we've got a 2020 in play. But we've got a hoop or two to jump through before we get there. We will need to Ghost Quarter this before we make our 2020. But I think our opponent's relatively odds on to win this one. Hydroblast. Okay, that's an interesting one. So if we Ghost Quarter this and we do this, we're going to have to sacrifice a land if we want to do this. So I'm not really sure it's worth doing that just yet. But this way we can hold up a removal spell for something like a Blood Moon. So if our opponent casts Blood Moon, we can win the game. So maybe we're supposed to Ghost Quarter them and try and get rid of the Blood Moon. Try and give them an option to cast a Blood Moon. Because we can Hydroblast it after we go and get our... Actually, no, we can't because of the Archon, right? So we don't get to counter this with Hydroblast. We can destroy it once it enters play. So we have not a lot of time left. So what we need to do now is we need to go and get a Thespian stage here, I believe, because that gives us the out that if we draw the Dark Depths, we can make it. Whereas if we draw a Dark Depths, we have no other out there. We can be punished by drawing a Hexmage by going this line, but I think it's still worth doing because we're limited by the amount of spells we get to cast every turn. So we're going to crop rotate this Sejiri Steppe into a Thespian stage. Because our land's coming untapped, we want this one which isn't... We want this one to untap so that if we draw the Dark Depths, even though it's tapped, we can make a copy. Sylvan Scrying. So if we... this is tricky. So this is green. Green, we can go and get Dark Depths here. So we can play Dark Depths. We cannot make this. Obviously they have a Caracas which will get us anyway. But we can Hydroblast this on our opponent's turn and hope that they are putting the counters on the caves. And then we can Ghost Quarter this. The next turn we have a Dark Depths to block with. So, but then we're dead to trap, right? Yeah, I think our opponent has us here in the squeeze. If they put the counters on the Archon, we're definitely dead. But we'll just see if we get some more. Where are these going? It should go on the Archon, I think. Yeah, alright, we'll concede. Yeah, it didn't really come together amazing for us, but now we know their initiative, we can change up what we're doing. I like the hand disruption on the play here. Pithing Needle is fine. For Touch the Spirit Realm, now we know it's there. I would rather have an additional, not of this world, but we don't have that because we're running the Stifles today. Stifle can stop that. It costs some mana. I think that's better than the Needle here because you have multiple things we want to get. And maybe another Stifle. No, I think we do want the Meltdowns though. It's kind of awkward with Meltdown, right? I guess if we're on the play and we've got Discard, we're less likely to want the Meltdown. We don't need the Bojuka Bog actually, so we can keep a Meltdown in. And that gives us 2 Stifles. Wouldn't mind a third, but I'm not really sure where we can realistically put it in. Oh, sorry, we've removed the Boseiju, not the Bojuka Bog. There we go. Okay, we will run like this. I don't think Quick Reflex is where you want to be in this particular matchup because it slows you down because it's an extra turn. Okay, we can keep this. This is a turn 3 with a little bit of help, but not a lot. Is that good enough? Maybe we can go better than this. Yeah, I think we can do a bit faster than this in this matchup. Okay, this is a turn 1. Turn 1 is good. What are we putting away? Thoughtseize probably. Lotus Petal. Lotus Petal. Hexmage. Depths. Alright. So if they play a Caracas, then we will Ghost Quarter. So Solitude is the thing we're kind of looking out for here, but we'll see how our opponent plays their turn. Like, if they leave open a white mana, we'll just attack with our Hexmage, because that's clearly Swords to Plowshares mana. To tap out for something big, then maybe we can consider going for it. Alright, what are they going to put under this Chrome Mox? Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Okay, so they're leaving open mana here. So this is Touch of the Spirit Realm quite clearly to me. So we don't have to do anything here. We can just go to attacks and attack for 2. Thespian Stage, is that better for us than the Ghost Quarter? I don't think so. I think we're going to play the Ghost Quarter. I'm just going to attack our opponent. Like, if they have to keep holding open mana, they're not committing to the board, and we're just going to grind their life total down a little bit until we find some protection in the form of someone like Not of This World. Or a discard spell and black mana. There's an Ancient Tomb. Alright, there's a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and they're holding open the white mana here. So that speaks volumes to me. Another Hexmage. Right, we'll go to Taxes, has first strike. I don't believe our opponent is going to block here. Oh, they are blocking. Interesting. Okay. First strike is good. I would not block if I were them there. But we obviously don't know what's in their hands. That can change things. We can activate our Thespian Stage if we feel the need. Let's see how many cards they discard to their Fable. Just the 1. Okay. That does say that they have an answer. Otherwise, you would desperately be filtering more cards in that situation. So they haven't just bluffed us here. Alright, so we're going to see a guy. Magus of the Moon. Interesting. So if we sacrifice our guy here... yeah, this is an awkward one. Because they've clearly got the thing. But how are we going to realistically beat this Magus of the Moon if we don't do it right now? I think we have to play into this, sadly. We're going to try and call their bluff a little bit. We're going to get touched here. They're going to plow us. Sure. So this is a very good example of why I like having 4 Not of This World in my main deck usually. But that's the thing that has to go if you're trying to play Stifles. Inquisition of Kozilek. Sure, we got nothing going on. We do have a green mana source though. And we have Dismembers in our deck. So we can Dismember their guy after crop rotating for a Dark Depths, which will have no counters on because of Magus of the Moon. But that window does not last forever. I think our opponent's got us here. So last week I played a green-black version of this deck where we beat all the Blood Moon decks very easily. That was a trophy league as well. So if you haven't checked it out, by all means go back and have a look. But you're kind of seeing the weakness of this build compared to the other build. Now this build has some strengths as well. It's better against some of the combo decks because you get to run things like Silence, Deafening Silence. Alright, so we could be taking 6 damage a turn. But if they have any creature, that changes a lot. Is this going to be a 4th Eolingus, or is it going to be a creature? Feels like a 4th Eolingus. There it is. Alright. So we're pretty much dead. So if we don't draw a Dismember in the very near future, we need to just draw Dismember and either crop rotation or, I guess Sylvan Scrying works too, or the Dark Depths itself. So this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So we have one more draw step. I think we're just dead here. So we take 10, we go to 18, and then... Yeah, if they play a threat here as well, we're also probably done. Especially anything they can copy. Like if they play an initiative guy, then we're definitely toast because they can make it and maybe copy it if they have more mana. Alright, they're just coming in with all the guys. Ouch. Kaiser Chaos Venture. Yeah, that's going to be lethal. Because we need 2 draw steps, and that's going to be taking a draw step from us. Alright, so we didn't win that one, sadly. Having less Not of This World in your deck is not optimal in my opinion. But hopefully we'll find a matchup where the Stifle is really good. You know, like a lot of the combo matchups and things like that. So let's go to round 2. This hand is a turn 3 uncounterable 2020. I will keep this. Stifle, not the most castable spell I've ever seen. So I think we want to start off with an Urborg here. This opens us up to the possibility of drawing a Vampire Hexmage next turn. Because it's either this or the Thespian Stage, so we want to cast the Needle that turn. Alright. Averting Catacombs from our opponent. Being turned into a tropical island. So we could be looking at Bug Beans. Noble Hierarch. Okay, so we're not looking at that. We're looking at something else. Could be Infect, perhaps. Doesn't matter which one of these you play right now. I don't believe it does. So let's play out the Thespian stage and pass. We can represent more things by having a stage in play. So we can represent Bowmasters with this mana, whereas if we had the Depths up, I guess we're still representing Bowmasters too, to be fair. But stage is a Trixier card, and it also doesn't necessarily let our opponent know that we are on the cusp of winning. Alright, we'll play this and pass. Does our opponent have lethal right now? I think we have to make the 20/20 unblock just in case they do. They do get to shrink our guy if we do this though. This will shrink our guy. This is not ideal. But it's better than dying. We take their Infect threat off the board. If they have Karakas in their deck, that's not great for us. A Blighted Agent. Sure. That's one that we don't get to do anything about. Alright. So we're attacking for 20. For 18, sorry. So opponent can't use their fetch land. We can play out our Gemstone Mine so that we have access to Stifle, which may or may not do something here. Is there any... I don't think there's any activated abilities we want to stop here, but I would like to have the extra mana to play around a daze here. So I think we're probably stifling the Noble Hierarch trigger so that their creature doesn't get +1/+1, because that might be the difference. Right, they're invigorating. It's a 5/5. They got Berserk. They do have a Berserk. We do not beat that. Okay, that's a little bit sad, but it is what it is. So Dismember is useful here, and Deafening Silence is an interesting one. It definitely has some utility. Pithing Needle on Yawgmoth Nexus is actively good. Bojuka Bog, not so hot here. Stifle, we can stifle an activation of Yawgmoth Nexus, which doesn't really appeal to me a great deal. We can stifle a Wasteland, which is a thing that our opponent can have. But is... Like, we definitely want the Dismember. That comes in over the Bojuka Bog. We're probably going to want protection from blue bounce spells. I like our discard suites here. Is it the Stifle going again? Deafening Silence does make them a lot more difficult, because they have to hit us multiple times usually. So I think we're going to go with this. Like, you can flip between Needles and Stifle. People want to see Stifle, don't they? Maybe I should put a Stifle instead of this. Let's have 1 Stifle and 3 Needles. There you go. But obviously Needle we get to play before we do our thing. And we'd have to hold open the mana for it. What does this hand do? We don't make a 20/20. We do slow our opponent down, but not necessarily by enough for my liking. Let's mulligan. What about this hand? We have a removal spell. We have a discard spell. We have our combo. Are we just trying to go faster here? I think we want a hand that actually does our thing. Yuck, this does not do our thing. Alright, we're going 4. This does do the thing. So we'll keep this. We get rid of the Ghost Quarter, although, you know, has some utility. I don't think we can afford to keep this Vampire Hexmage. We can only have 1 of them. Which means we only get 1 Thoughtseize here. I need the Ghost Quarter actually to cast a Sylvan Scrying. So Vampire Hexmage goes, Thoughtseize goes. I kind of want to keep a Thoughtseize, because otherwise we're not doing anything. But that means getting rid of a Ghost Quarter. Or we get rid of the Scrying. I think we get rid of the Ghost Quarter. We've got loads of land in our deck, so let's just believe in the heart of the cards, right? I don't really believe in the heart of the cards right now, but I think that's, percentage-wise, our better keep. So let's pop this Thoughtseize. What have we got? Blighted Agent, Embiggen, Force of Will. I'm going to take this Force of Will, because we don't have many spells. So we need to cast our things, otherwise we're never going to be able to win this game. So we played the Misty. They can hold up a Brainstorm if we have any follow-up discard. Or they need to go fishing for something. Okay. You have a Lotus Petal. Now that we know the coast is relatively clear, let's Sylvan Scrying. We're looking for Dark Depths because we can't win without it. So I'm probably going to Brainstorm looking for a Daze or Force of Will. Feels like they are. We'll get this Dark Depths. We will play this Dark Depths right now. That way, if we draw any black source, we can make the Hexmage and combo. So I imagine this turn we see a Blighted Agent hit play. Right, they're also showing us white mana, so Swords of Plowshares is quite likely to be in our opponent's deck rather than bounce spells, but we already have the Not of This World in our deck. Alright, that's not really the one we want right now. So are we naming Caracas or are we naming Wasteland? I think we want to name Caracas, but I mean, that's a tough one. I think we go for the Wasteland, but I think we're dead anyway. The Multi 4 was a bit much. But they probably have at least one Wasteland in their deck that they can crop rotate for. Although they might not be running Wasteland. It's definitely possible that they're not running it. Ponder. We haven't seen the crop rotation yet. So we could be dead this turn if our opponent has some Invigorate action to go. So this creature is a Phyrexian Human Rogue. So it will get +4/+4 from Embiggen because this is one for each type. So it's super type and subtype. So creature, Phyrexian Human Rogue. That's +4/+4. So they would need to have a land and a Berserk, or 2 Invigorates, or a Pendlehaven as a land drop would do it with an Invigorate. Alright, they're just playing another Infect creature. Sure. I do not fancy our chances here. A crop rotation. Okay, we have a thing that allows us to try and win the game. So I will do that. I don't think we block this time. We can block with a Hexmage on the Glistener Elf. They do have access to an Yawgmoth Nexus though. So that can chump on the way back. So, okay, Embiggen on this. Sure, we can't block this. They got a Berserk. They do have a Berserk, so that's just lethal and we can't do anything about that. Yeah, we got crushed pretty hard there. I think this matchup is pretty 50-50 for the most part. I don't think we're playing, like I said, I don't think we're playing necessarily the optimal build. But we mulligan to 4 and we kind of got a bit rocked. Like having the Stifles isn't really that useful in this matchup. Like we had no useful Stifle stuff there. Like maybe we stifled a fetch land, but that's not really what our deck's about. Alright, we're sadly off to a bad start. Let's see if we can turn it around in the back half. Let's go to round 3. We are on the play for round 3. Our opening hand doesn't do anything, so let's mulligan it. Now this is a different hand that also doesn't do anything, so we're going to mulligan. This is the hand that does stuff. We will keep it. We need to throw back 2 cards. So I guess we'll throw back the redundant cards and I hope that we can get there. So step 1. Urborg Thoughtseize. Mishra's Bauble, Ponder, Murktide Regent. We don't really care about many of these cards. Probably Ponder is the scariest thing here. I think we take the Ponder. Now the Murktide can be annoying, but we usually will just try and beat through it. Right, so we're going to see Misty Rainforest Cracking, almost certainly playing out a Ponder. Yep. They did not shuffle their library. Interesting. Sylvan Scrying. Now, Sylvan Scrying is not the same as crop rotation here. Now, our opponent has got Ponder going on. Do we think if we fire this off, we can play around days, it's just a Force of Will that gets us here. If we go for the crop rotation, which gives us the kill next turn. Or we could go slightly slower and Sylvan Scrying, which is probably the better way of playing around what our opponent's got here, because they're not a deck that's going to pressure us immensely. Alright, yeah, sure. We can't pay for this. But it means next turn we get to attempt the combo. We have a lot of information about what our opponent's hand contains. There is the Bauble. I'm surprised not to see it last turn. They're looking at their own, so they're seeing if they want to use a fetch land or not. So they've got an Underground Sea, Orcish Bowmasters, and Murktide Regent. So they can play a Murktide Regent next turn, but it will just have to chump block. Alright, so we have our Dark Depths in play here. In our opponent's upkeep, we'll do this because our opponent's deck is a Wasteland deck. A Brainstorm. Okay, so this is when we're going to do it then in response. Let's turn this Gemstone Mine into a Thespian stage. Like I said, our opponent is a Wasteland deck, so in our opponent's upkeep, we will activate our Thespian stage. Although this might not play around a Stifle. So maybe we're supposed to do it right now, actually. That makes sense. Stifle on the trigger basically buys them a turn, which is another turn to find a Wasteland. So Brazen Borrower and Shoulder's Edict are the 2 things we don't want to see. A lot of these decks are down to just 1 Borrower. A Channeler. This guy is going to be chump blocking. And a Ponder, sure. So Sejiri Steppe wins us the game. Crop Rotation can win us the game if we want to go for it. So this can chump block this turn. next turn... Okay, they shuffled off their Ponder. So next turn they can chump block with the Murktide. Sylvan Scrying. Let's go to attacks. This is going under the bus. Are we firing this off now? Or do we want it for next turn? I think we'll hold it. So our opponent thinks that their chump block is good. Alright, so they're wastelanding our... Okay, so there's the punish for that. Alright, they're wastelanding and then scooping. Sure. Okay, so Delver matchup is a matchup I am pretty happy about as a general rule. So Stifle on Wastelands is good, Pithing Needle on Wasteland is good, Bojuka Bog is fine, but we can usually upgrade it for something. Not of This World is pretty reasonable. I'm expecting some stuff. Normally I'd have some hand disruption in our deck, but that's not a thing we have in this particular build because we wanted to sort of test out a lot of different tools today. So Bojuka Bog is one of the few things I'm thinking about trimming here, but honestly I don't think any of these are better. Like Dismember can sometimes come up. These decks don't have Blood Moons or anything, so I think we're just going back. Like Hydroblast is reasonable to get rid of like a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Is it better than a Bojuka Bog? I don't know. Like Bojuka Bog is kind of fine, so I think we're just going to go in. A lot of the time, Turbodepths decks that I build are pretty much pre-boarded for Delver. Alright, so sometimes we change out some discard for different discard or something like that. So we have Pithing Needle on Wasteland. We just need to find some more mana. And I believe in our deck to find mana because a lot of it is mana. There's some mana. You can pay around a daze to get this Pithing Needle down, but we don't really care if this gets dazed that much. Alright, we're just in with it. Our opponent probably has Molten Collapse, so we might want to play a second Pithing Needle if we're not doing anything with our mana on the next turn. There is a Flooded Strand. Underground Sea. This is Molten Collapse. Or we're just going to see some filtering of cards with Ponders and such. Okay, so there's a Molten Collapse. But we just get to play another Pithing Needle, so that's fine. Because they can't play a Wasteland yet. Molten Collapse, good card. Alright, back over to us. A Mana Confluence. Okay, we will play out a Mana Confluence. We'll play out a Pithing Needle. Name Wasteland. Then I will Thoughtseize our opponent's hand. If we have a daze for this, we can think about paying with our Spirit Guide. Feels like they're trying to protect something. Is that going to be a borrower? If so, Not This World is fine. So if we don't pay here, we can make a 20/20 next turn. But if we pay, we're going to need to draw some more cards. So I think we're just going to let this go and hope the Not of This World can do enough. So they have Molten Collapse this turn. It's not good enough anyway. Right. We're going to see a Brainstorm here, which is going to give them... Well, they already had Delirium actually because of the days. So we're going to take 3 here, which is fine. And then we can slap down our little 20/20 next turn. This is uncounterable 20/20 as well. Shoulder's Edict is something I'm not looking forward to, but Brazen Borrower is something we can beat. Crop Rotation. Does that change anything here? I don't believe it does. So in our opponent's... So we don't have the mana showing for our combo right now. So maybe... And because we already have the Wasteland covered, maybe we're just going to pass the turn and maybe our opponent will spend another turn digging and then we get to jump them with the guy. Which means we're probably going to just let this Dragon's Rage Channeler hit us. The power of hidden fast mana. Right, because we can always just... Because their answer for the Pithing Needle was going to be Molten Collapse. Right, they're lightning bolting us. Okay. This is in their upkeep so they can filter their draws. There is a Wasteland. We have that covered already. Alright, let's do the thing. I believe they have a Brazen Borrower here. Hoping they don't also have a Daze to go alongside it. Okay. Gotten through. Oh, they're just scooping up. We had the Not of This World anyway. So we had that one covered. If you watch my channel, you know that I think Delver is a very good matchup for Turbodepths and one of the reasons to play it. I really like it into this sort of matchup. Okay, so we're on the board. Let's see if we can rally it for the positive record. Alright, this hand is Here's a tasty one. I will keep this one. We've got discard, uncountable 2020, bit of graveyard interaction if we want that. So we'll lead off on the Urborg, I believe. This gives us the out to draw Hexmage to make a turn 2. Entomb, Lotus Petal, Reanimate. Okay, well this is quite an easy one. I will take this Reanimate. Hullbreaker Horror is cool. We don't see that guy every day. So we've kind of undone our opponent's hand. They would have had a turn 1, whatever creature they wanted. Right, so they play a couple of things. Right, they're entombing. A Grizzlebrand. And not of this world. So if we play the Bojuka Bog, that slows us down by a whole turn. The opponent's got one card in hand that we don't know. If it's Animate Dead or Exhume, then we're in trouble. If we don't play as Bojuka Bog. But if we give our opponent more draw steps, that's not going to be great for us either. Why would they entomb right there and then? Is it just so they can F6 through our turn? I don't think we win this game by going slower. So I think I'm just going to play a Thespian Stage. Or is it the Depths? If we play the Depths, then if we draw a Hexmage, we can also Bojuka Bog and Hexmage next turn. Tropical Island. Okay. So we'll play out our Thespian Stage. We now have a 2020 available to us. We're going to see another Entomb. This is also going to filter out their deck, so they're less likely to draw bad cards. Well, that's the logic anyway. But they can put a guy into play, and we might be able to get through that anyway. All right, let's just do the thing. We have a piece of defense. All right, they're scooping it up to that. Excellent. So I would like some graveyard hate, please. So that's step 1. Do we think our opponent has Makers of the Moon? That's the thing that these decks can sometimes reach for. I'm not a big fan of having the Pithing Needles here, but they showed us a Tropical Island, which is unusual. So I definitely want to keep these not of this world. It means they're more likely to have some spooky blue stuff going on. And that gives us 1 additional slot. So I think a Deafening Silence, but we can have more of these on the draw. But on the draw they're not amazing. They're just fine. So I think we're going to run like this. Because if we play it on the play, that can slow our opponent down by a turn or 2. But if we're on the draw, then it's not going to stop them necessarily. Okay, this is a turn 2 2020. Speed is good. It might be too slow in this matchup, but we have a little bit of interaction in Boseiju as well. Lotus Petal. Okay, that's some fast mana. We're going to see... We're not going to see the thing. Okay. We're just going to play this out and pass. We're not representing crop rotation. They could do an end of turn Entomb here. There's the end of turn Entomb. I suspect we're going to see a big monster. Archon of Cruelty is a pretty good one against us, but Grizzlebrand is hard to go wrong with too. If you're just playing onto an open board. The Archon disrupts our combo quite nicely. There's a Trop. Do not have it. Interesting. Right, let's see if we can get a Hexmage into play. A Brainstorm in response, sure. I'm intrigued they didn't Brainstorm in their previous turn if they had that. Because if they're a combo deck, you're more likely to want to do that. So we don't want to just make the guy, because if they play an Archon of Cruelty, that can jam us right up. I'd much rather lose our Hexmage than anything else. Reanimate on the Grizzlebrand, sure. Our hand is very discard proof. We can't go and get a Sejiri Steppe though. But we could draw one. Or we could draw a thing that lets us find one. An Entomb, sure. This is going to get an Archon of Cruelty. That's going to be pretty good. There it is. Can they reanimate it as well? Seems like they're drawing like a million cards. There is the Animate Dead. So we'll lose our Hexmage here. And we'll get rid of our other Hexmage, I suppose. It's basically useless at this point. Because we're never going to have the mana to have that and activate our Dark Depths. Whereas Thespian Stage, we can activate in combat. Okay. I don't hate that. A little bit late. If we'd have had that for when they're reanimating stuff, that would have been nice. So we can make a 2020 in combat. Or the problem with that is we put the Archon of Cruelty into the graveyard. So this is 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's fine. We can just discard like a Gemstone Mine here. Make this, untap, go and get Sejiri Steppe, kill our opponent. Whereas if we block and kill this, our opponent can then reanimate it. And that's not great for us. Because then they just get to kill our Marit Lage. This gives us the most odds for being able to win the game next turn. A little bit worried about potential Force of Wills, but we don't really have an option to play around what's going on right now. A Grief. Grief is good. Sure, so we're going to lose this crop rotation because it's the only thing they can take. Alright. If we had tried to ambush this in combat, we might have been okay. But we'll never know. Can we draw it one time? We did not draw it. So if we play out this Gemstone Mine, we can Thoughtseize our opponent. Yeah, we were kind of hoping to draw the thing there. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this as well. So let's Thoughtseize our opponent first and see what they're working with. So we're going to Boseiju away the Animate Dead and hopefully... Veil of Summer, very rude. Okay. So we're going to get rid of this Grizzlebrand. And then we can blow up the Animate Dead in our opponent's beginning of combat step. And hopefully the Archon of Cruelty won't be able to come back. Not sure how likely that is for us, but it's what we've got. They know we have this Boseiju because they saw our hand with Grief. The chances of them having another reanimation spell are pretty high. We take 3 this turn. Any reanimation spell will win this game. Yep, that'll do the trick. I will scoop to that one. Okay, we're on the play for the final game. That makes the Deafening Silences more tempting. We've seen a little bit more of our opponent's deck. Still not sure what the... I guess they're just splashing for Veil of Summer. Although they are doing Brainstorm stuff as well. So they're kind of like blue-black Reanimator. So if we're boarding in some Deafening Silences, what do we not want? I don't think we want these Not of This World, having seen the way our opponent's deck is laid out. I don't mind having one, but I don't think we need a bunch. Do I want something like Pithing Needle for Grizzlebrand? Not really. It's not that scary, to be honest. Like, if they have a Grizzlebrand in play, then, you know, it's in play. And we've already kind of failed in some aspect. Alright, we're going to go in like this. Double protection from their reanimation. We're only looking to draw one of our combo pieces. But we're kind of at the mercy of our opponent. I think this is not great, but I think it is keepable. Which I will take. Right, the lower they go, the more impactful the Surgical is, because they're less likely to have hand disruption to go alongside their combo. We also have the Sejiri Steppe, which can be nice when we make our 2020 because it means that it gets to dodge their blocker. So you can't just like gain 7 life or whatever with a Grizzlebrand. The Swamps, we're going to see an end of turn in 2, I believe. A Ghost Quarter. I believe we're going to play out another Mana Confluence here. An Entomb, sure. What flavour of creature are you going for? It's probably just Grizzlebrand. It's usually the one you get in a situation like this. There it is, yeah. So hopefully we can wait till they try and reanimate it. Or animate dead it even. A Ponder. Okay. So maybe they expect we have a Surgical and they want to at least get a free shuffle out of it. So Ponder, they shuffle their Ponder anyway, sure. A Lotus Petal. I will play a Dark Depths and a Lotus Petal this turn. It's better in play, I believe, because our opponent can make us discard stuff. They're unlikely to hit the Lotus Petal anyway, to be fair. But you never know. Animate Dead. I would like to cast this, targeting Grizzlebrand. I will pay 1 life instead of more than 1 life. There is a Force of Will. Pitching Atraxa. So the second one, we can pay with the... We can pay around a days with the Lotus Petal here. They only have 1 days available, so let's go again. Alright, so we take out this Grizzlebrand. They don't have any more Grizzlebrands in their deck. Well, we got Hullbreaker Horror, 2 Show and Tells, some more Force of Wills, no Daisies, so that's good to know about. Grief, Dark Rituals, Veil of Summer. Yeah, pretty interesting deck list. And our opponent's hand is Brainstorm, Ponder, Brazen Borrower. That's a pretty good hand. Should have checked their basics since we have this in play. Okay, our opponent has to keep open their Brazen Borrower mana at all times, otherwise they will die. So we have double Rishadan Port in play right now. Ooh, this Ponder is a bit brave. If this doesn't find them a blue source, they are just dead on board. I chose not to shuffle. Alright, so there's the blue source. Alright, we're not going to make it into the obvious Borrower. We're just going to enjoy our double thing. We have the Sejiri Steppe in hand, which is kind of annoying. Truth be told. Let's play a Ghost Quarter though. So we can make it, we can make the 2020, they can bounce it, then we can make the 2020 again. Or we can hold this for, okay, there is a Brainstorm. And there is an Entomb for an Atraxa. That's going to shuffle those Brainstorm cards as well. Pretty nice. Polluted Delta. I don't think with the threat of reanimation we want to waste our crop rotation here. So I think we are probably going to start removing counters from our Dark Depths naturally now that we have the ability to. So we can tap the Mana Confluence without taking damage because of the Yavimaya. A Stifle. That doesn't work with Brazen Borrower, sadly. So I think we're on the slow boat to Depths Town. So we can spend all our mana on this and then use the one in our hand. And we're still holding up the Bojuka Bog. There is a Lotus Petal. Alright. We're slowly stripping the counters off. Not of this world. Okay, that's the sort of thing that we've been looking for. So we will do that in the very near future. Let's see if this is any good. Let's not of this world. They've got 3 cards left in hand. They could have a force here. A Veil of Summer. Interesting. So we do lose our 2020 right now. But we can do it again next turn. So let's Thoughtseize our opponent. Dark Ritual, Dark Ritual. Okay, I guess we're taking a Dark Ritual. And is now the time we know that we're safe to do this, so we're going to crop rotate this into a Thespian stage now that we know there's no counter spells over there. That does expose us to a reanimation spell, but the only reanimation thing I can get is Atraxa, and we can also protect our guy through an Atraxa, and we can stifle the trigger of the Atraxa. So, alright, we got the match. I quite like the reanimate matchup as a general rule. Our plan is generally quite discard proof, and we have main deck graveyard hate, and we increase our graveyard hate with surgicals as well. And we've got hand disruption. We've got some good tools. Alright, so we are looking for the 3-2 record if we win the last round. So let's see if we can get there. Right, into the final round. What does our hand do? Doesn't make a 2020. So that's what I'm about. This hand does make a 2020 on turn 1. Gemstone Mine, Lotus Petal, black, black. Okay, yeah, well this is a turn 1 2020. I guess we throw away the Thoughtseize here. Let's play this. It's a little bit all in, but very much what I'm about, isn't it? So in our opponent's upkeep, we'll make this now to dodge Wasteland. This is where we get Swords to Plowshare immediately. Are we in? Are we good? We are good. We don't know what our opponent's playing, but we're good. We have no information to work with. Are we just going straight back in again? I think so. I don't recognise our opponent's username from any specific archetypes. I think we just have to roll back in again. This isn't quite a turn 1, but it's not far off of it. I'll keep this. Our opponent's mulligan to 5 cards. We do also have emergency crop rotations, which I'm always a fan of having access to. Bojuka Bog is a good card. Opponent's begun with 5 cards. Very interesting. Wooded Foothills. Land. Interesting, interesting. I will play this Lotus Petal so we have access to crop rotation if we want it. Then I'll play this Pithing Needle. They're going to fetch off their Wooded Foothills. I'm not naming Wooded Foothills, obviously, but they don't know that. They might. There's no reason for them not to unless they need a shuffle effect. Or if they want to daze this. Alright. Plateau. Wooded Foothills getting Plateau. Wooded Foothills getting Plateau. This is Painter. This is a Painter matchup, I'm pretty sure. Stone Grindstone here. So that information they gave us, Wooded Foothill fetching Plateau. Now they could be on some other deck, to be fair. But red fetches, getting Plateau, this strikes me as the red-white Painter build. Let's see if my knowledge of the format has come good, or we've kind of knackered ourselves a bit. I'd like to have some meltdowns if that's what this matchup is. So if they don't fetch with that, I name Wasteland. Let's see if I got the Soul Read. Another Plateau. Our opponent's thinking about lots of decisions and playing very deliberately and taking a lot of time, which in my experience is something that a lot of Painter players do. The deck's got a lot of really cool lines. It does reward you for thinking. Oh, look at that. We've absolutely nailed our opponent there. So this is probably going to get them Ensnaring Bridge. would be my guess. Depending on how they have the rest of their hand shaped up. Phyrexian Dragon. Okay, so they want some more card advantage. I don't want to have to burn this crop rotation. Another Urborg. Interesting. So if we tap this for black, crop rotate it into... Taps for black. Crop rotate this into the Dark Depths. We haven't played a land yet. So we can play this one out. Tap this for black. Play the Hexmage. And we can pass. So we have the Swords to Plowshares covered. So while they've got 2 white open, I don't really want to jam our guy if we can avoid it. We'd like to have some more green mana, please. Grindstone, yep. So that's something our opponent can weld stuff around with. Do I believe our opponent has 2 Swords to Plowshares in hand? I do not believe they have two Swords to Plowshares. I don't think it gets better for us if we just let our opponent draw 3 cards every turn. So I think we go for it here. If they've got double plow, then fair enough, opponent. But if they've got single plow, we get them. Here's the first plow. We say no to this. Can we have the win? Or you got another one? They do have another one. All right. Not a bad hand, opponent. Not a bad one. So we have a Mana Confluence here. We can Sylvan Scrying and try and get our stuff up and running, or we can just shut down our opponent's graveyard. I like doing that, because this is a sacrifice, so we'll wait for them to sacrifice something, and then we'll snatch them all up with a Boseiju. And then we're going to keep the Mana Confluence so we at least have access to green. They should just be going on an Urza Saga plan. Although they do get to do this at their own speed. So we kind of have to hold this open. So maybe we're a little bit greedy for that, but we'll see. Need to tap a red mana if they want to do this. Which isn't really how I wanted to use my team. If we let our opponent draw 3 cards every turn, they will win this game in pretty short order. Let's just say no to this. So we took a Grindstone out of play as well. They've got at least one other Grindstone in their deck as well. And Urza Saga can find it. So what are we looking for here? Parts of our combo. That is a part of our combo, isn't it? Let us go and get the Dark Depths. We play this out. We need to potentially be worried about things like Magus of the Moon. Obviously, not the best combo with your own Urza Saga, but if it shuts your opponents down more than yours, then you bring it in. Obviously, if we were the black-green build, we'd be a lot better against Magus in general. But we'll see what our opponent's up to here. I'm surprised they're not making tokens, but I guess us being on 38 life is kind of an annoying barrier for the beatdown plan. Pithing Needle. Are they going to name Thespian Stage, or are they going to name Vampire Hexmage? You've already used one Hexmage, so the statistical name should be Thespian Stage, but they might think we're just really heavy on turbo. So, yeah, so they name the Thespian Stage, which is what I would name in our opponent's position. Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. So they can do some welding shenanigans to get this Pithing Needle so they can turn it into a Lotus Petal and then turn it into a needle again and change what it's naming. But obviously by that time it's too late. Alright. I like our chances here. A Lotus Petal. Is that better? Or is it better to keep a surprise in hand? I think it's probably better to keep a surprise in hand here. So our opponent going to draw any Swords to Plowshares. They've got 1 or 2 left in their deck. I think they play 3 main and 1 in the sideboard, but obviously there's a little bit of variation in the builds. They did discard looking for something. There's a mountain. Okay, so we have this game. Our opponent has no additional cards to leverage. Everything on the board is face up and doesn't beat our 2020. They can't get this Pithing Needle into play in a way that interacts with us. Let's make the Marit Lage. I think my my stone cold read of the wooded foothills into plateau was it didn't end up mattering because they didn't have the painter to assemble, but they could have got the painter with the engineer or something like that. But the stone cold read there from playing way too much legacy, or maybe not enough legacy, because can you have too much legacy? But yeah, that was pretty good. So what they're going to do, they're going to get their Lotus Petal back here. Okay. So my opponent hasn't scooped, which makes me worried I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. Okay, there it is. All right, so we finished with a 3-2 after a rocky start. I think I can't remember the last time I didn't go at least 3-2 with Turbodepths. Like, it probably has happened at some point, but I just don't remember it. But generally, like 3-2 is kind of your baseline of where you want to go. Anything below 3-2 is a failure. Usually you want to be looking at 4-1s or at least I do, 4-1s or 5-0s. So this is below par, is what I would say for the deck. Like, you need to get fortunate matchups a little bit. Sometimes, you know, there are matchups which are horrible, like if you're playing loads and loads of the Bant Stalk decks and you're going to have a bad time. But yes, so 3-2 with a suboptimal build, in my opinion, of the deck. So let's talk about why I think that this build isn't ideal. So today we were trying out Stifle. Now, we had Stifle in a few games. What did it actually do for us? We stifled a trigger of a Noble Hierarch that didn't do anything. We stifled we had the option of stifling an Atraxa trigger, but we didn't really get much going with Stifle. Now, in that last matchup, Stifle was kind of interesting. Things with like Welder actions and the Grindstone, obviously, as a Saga. So Stifle is actually pretty reasonable in that last matchup. But would I rather have Hydroblasts? Yes. I think I would rather have Hydroblast in that matchup almost all the time, as opposed to Stifle. But the Stifle is still a fine main deck card in that slot. But the problem we have is we've cut our Not of This World. So in my like ordinary sort of builds, I would normally have none of these Stifles. I would have one more Not of This World, one Legolas Swift Reflexes, and a second Boseiju. That's what I would normally have in a Turbodepths build. So we're not obviously deviating a lot, but we've got a little bit less mana. And obviously the flexibility of Boseiju is very nice, especially when you're Rainbow, because you really want to have multiple ways of dealing with Blood Moon itself. And, you know, the Spirit Guides and the Lotus Petal combined with the Boseiju gives you outs in your deck. And obviously Not of This World would have actively been good for us. I think there was a game where we had Stifle in hand instead of Not of This World. So I like to call it the Stifle trap when you play Stifle in this deck, because you think, okay, so Stifle is a card that answers a lot of things, right? It answers Wasteland. It answers Caracas. It answers Solitude. It answers Leyline Binding. So these are actually pretty reasonable things to be answering. The issue with it is that it costs you other cards in your deck. And the opportunity cost of Stifle is you have to hold up mana for Stifle, which is a big deal. And also you have to have the blue mana. And we did have Stifle without the blue mana once or twice. But yeah, so you have to hold up the mana. And we are trying to spend a lot of mana in one turn because we're playing all this fast mana so that we can do our Thespian stage or Hexmage or whatever and Dark Depths in one turn, right? So we have to leverage our mana. And if we wait a turn longer in this format that's quite fast, that is another turn that our opponent has to, find an additional answer. Because we're already kind of maxing out on what we're doing mana-wise. So, that gives them opportunities for dazes and things which can interact with the Stifle, or they'll have a second piece of removal. What if they have two plows, or two solitudes or whatever. So it becomes a significant opportunity cost to be playing the Stifles, I find. And like Pithing Needle is just the best answer to Wasteland, right? You play one, it cancels out all of the Wastelands. If you Stifle a Wasteland and they just have a second Wasteland or a Loam, then you've held open your mana for nothing, right? Personally, I think Tamiyo's safekeeping a lot of the time is better than Stifle because it gives a permanent you control hexproof. So you can protect your land or you can protect your 2020. So it kind of does double duty. So it does a very similar thing to Stifle. I don't even think you should be running Tamiyo's safekeeping unless you're in a budget build. I think there are just better options of Legolas's Quick Reflexes is quite a nice one, but I think if you want to swap that for Tamiyo's safekeeping, that's fine. The reason I like to run Quick Reflexes right now is because I hate playing against the Bant decks, and having 3 Reflexes, 1 in the main, 2 in the board, has been reasonable to give you a shout to at least play through some removal spells. And there's not enough room to have 3 in the sideboard, so you have to have 1 in the main. Again, you could have Tamiyo's safekeeping, I think that's fine. But Stifle's kind of doing a similar thing. Where Stifle shines the most, though, is some of the combo decks that race you. So let's say a Storm deck, you Stifle a Storm trigger, or a Wishclaw activation, or something like that, and you can completely just ruin the game for your opponent, and then go on to win it. So there is definitely some use for Stifle, but in my experience, I found hand disruption and like graveyard disruption, or things like Deafening Silence, Collector Roof, those sorts of big haymakers are a lot more powerful than a Stifle that you have to have in your hand. You have to have the mana open, which costs you the opportunity of playing your game plan, whereas you can discard and then do your thing, or you can play your Deafening Silence or your Collect Roof and then just carry on your way doing your thing, because quite often your big turn is like turn 3. So if you play like a Needle on 1 and a Collect Roof on 2, and then on 3 you're ready to go, that is going to be effective, right? Or you know you have discard on turn 1, and then turn 2 maybe you're Sylvan Scrying to get things going or whatever. And I just think Not of This World is the best protection spell you can have, and the format is quite fast right now, and there's a lot of aggro decks, so there's a lot of removal around to deal with aggro decks. Like Painter is now playing white so it can run Swords to Plowshares for this exact reason, as you saw in that last round. It wants to be able to kill creatures. So having 4 Not of This World in our very linear, we have to make a 2020 to win the game thing, is the correct play in my opinion. Now, what I will say is Stifle as a 5th Pithing Needle is acceptable in my general reasonings with the deck, but I don't really like the Stifle very much. I go on about it at length on the deck tech on my Patreon if you want to check that out. There's a section on the Stifle trap. Now, that's not to say Stifle's completely useless, but I think people lean on the Stifle thinking, okay, it can answer all these things. But what they do is they create themselves a new problem of having to hold open this mana, especially when people play it over Pithing Needle. So like, oh, it answers all these things, including Wasteland, but now I'm holding up this Stifle the whole time to play around Pithing Needle. So I'm just kind of Rishadan porting myself the whole time. And, you know, you've seen how tight the mana is in this deck sometimes. We only have just enough mana to go off. And that 1 extra mana is a big deal. Like things like Reflexes, this is why it's mainly a sideboard card for me, because if you're against a slower matchup, you bring in the Reflexes, right? Because then you have the time to do it. But in the main deck, you just want the 4 Not as well. You say no to stuff, right? And the fact that this hits abilities as well as spells is really useful. So that's kind of my little rant about Stifle here. I think, you know, I've 5-0'd with Stifle in my lists. It was probably the worst card in the deck at the time. Like, I am a big fan of Stifle as a card, but only in like specific tempo decks which are able to leverage it really effectively and just get over the line. Because we're trying to do a very specific thing, I think having quite specific, powerful answers is the better way to go. So that's why I'm a big fan of Not of This World. And I think I've elaborated that point quite enough for you lovely people. Let's talk about the sideboard choices we had. Hydroblast, I would have had that in the final game if we didn't just kill our opponent on turn 1. Everything else was fine here. Normally, I would run the Sudden Shock as my answer to things like Mages of the Moon or Opposition Agent. Dismember does the same thing, but is counterable. However, it only costs 1 mana, which can be a big deal. The life loss is kind of why I'm a little bit sketchy on Dismember, because your life total is a resource in a lot of the decks that play Mages of the Moon, right? Or, you know, like Mages of the Moon or play Opposition Agent, because they tend to be quite big and stompy, whether they're playing out Goblins or Initiative or, you know, like the Mono Black sort of, I don't want to say full stompy list, but they are pretty stompy heavy sometimes, you know, powering out Sholdrids, you know, Doughty Void walks on turn 1. Your life total is definitely a resource, and paying 4 life is sometimes too much, especially when we're also a Thoughtseize deck, and we want to keep in our Thoughtseize against matchups where they have these big haymakers for us. So that's why I tend to prefer Sudden Shock in Rainbow. But also, Lightning Bolt is a perfectly fine answer as well. Like, we have 8 red sources, so, you know, we can relatively reliably cast Lightning Bolt, but then if we are underneath a Mages of the Moon, Lightning Bolt is always castable. So I think I probably prefer Lightning Bolt to the Dismember, but it's nice to play different things, see how they feel. If you just play the same thing all the time, you don't, well, you do learn stuff, but you don't learn as much as you could if you play things. So I will play suboptimal builds, in my opinion, of this deck, because I want to fine-tune as much as I can. I want to learn about different interactions in the meta and how cards that I don't think are good, are they still not good? Let's check. Let's find out. And, you know, that's why I put a lot of work into my Patreon as well. Every month I update my guide to Turbodepths, trying out new stuff or old stuff even to see if it works or not and see how it feels. You know, this all gets condensed down into some actual learning. And hopefully you enjoy these little rambles. I imagine many of you have already checked out, but I think it's important, especially at the end when people already left the video anyway. But I like to examine the finer points of decks, and we were doing some experimenting today. I think I had a reasonably good idea of showing you why Stifle doesn't feel good. Now, if you go back and watch the undefeated list I had a few weeks ago, sometime in December, I had a Turbodepths deck with Stifle in that I 5-0'd with. But again, we didn't 5-0 because of Stifle. Stifle wasn't the thing that let us win the game at any point, really. So I think I've made my point with Stifle. All right. I think we are done for today. So thank you very much for watching. And I hope you like my foray into a build that I don't necessarily think is the optimal one. And if you are interested in what I do think are optimal, again, you can have a look at my Patreon. But if you just want to have a look for free, join the Discord below. You can just join that for free. And I have a dedicated Turbodepths discussion section of my Discord where I talk about Rainbow, well, where everyone in there talks about Rainbow or Golgari and then individual card choices and stuff. And I have what I think are the most competitive lists. I have those pinned in the channel. So if you want to see that, want to talk to me about it, I'm all ears. It's the best place to get hold of me. And I'm always happy to answer questions on this deck. It is my baby, as you have probably realized. And hopefully by the time you're watching this video, the last cards that I need in the Legolas is Reflexes, which are arriving for me soon. And hopefully I will get my old boarded Thespian stages soon. I'll try and take a nice deck picture that people love to do. I can never do them, but I'll try and take a nice one for you all. All right, rambling aside, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate all the support. It means a lot to me, and Legacy is such a great format, and I'm hoping that some of you have been encouraged to play it. Even if you're not playing this deck, you're playing anything else, just play the format. It is great. It is the best thing you can do with Magic the Gathering. All right, again, thank you, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.